When we think of miracles, our minds often turn to the extraordinary. The parting of the Red Sea, the feeding of the 5,000, or Jesus walking on water. These are the awe-inspiring displays of God's power that capture our imagination and remind us of His greatness. But miracles are more than just demonstrations of God's power. At the heart of every miracle is God's profound, unconditional love for us. Miracles are expressions of God's love breaking into our world, reaching into our lives, and touching our hearts in ways that only He can. Each miracle is an invitation to experience His presence, His care, and His provision. God's love brings miracles into our lives, not simply to show us what He can do, but to show us who He is. A loving Father who cares deeply for each of His children. In 1 John 4:9, we read that this is how God showed His love among us. He sent His one and only Son into the world that we might live through Him. This verse points us to the greatest miracle of all, the gift of Jesus. When God sent His Son, He performed the ultimate miracle, bridging the gap between heaven and earth so that we might have eternal life. And why did He do this? Because of His immense love for us. The miracle of Jesus was not an act of power alone, but an act of unparalleled love. Every miracle we see in the Bible, every act of healing, provision, and deliverance flows from this same love. It is God's love that brings about miracles, and it is His love that sustains them. Every time we witness God's hand at work in our lives, we are witnessing His love poured out upon us in a tangible way. God's love is at the heart of every miracle, whether it's something grand and public or a quiet answer to prayer that we experience privately. Sometimes we overlook the everyday miracles because we're so focused on the extraordinary, but God's love is present in the little things as much as in the big things. It's there in the way He provides for our needs, in the unexpected encouragement we receive just when we need it most, or in the peace that fills our hearts during a time of trial. Each of these is a miracle, a reminder that God is with us, watching over us and caring for us. His love is not reserved for only the grand moments. It's woven into the fabric of our daily lives. When we start to recognize the small ways that God shows His love, we begin to see that miracles are not as rare as we might think. They are all around us, signs of God's ongoing presence and His tender care. Consider the Israelites in the wilderness. God's love brought them out of Egypt, delivered them from slavery, and set them on the path to the promised land. But the journey was not easy, and the people soon found themselves hungry, thirsty, and wondering if God was still with them. Yet, in each moment of need, God provided. He gave them manna from heaven, water from a rock, and a pillar of cloud and fire to guide them. These miracles were not only signs of God's power, they were expressions of His love. God didn't just rescue His people and then abandon them. No, He walked with them, cared for their needs, and showed them that His love was steadfast and unwavering. Each miracle was a reminder that God was with them, that He had not forgotten them, and that His love would sustain them through every trial. The same is true for us today. God's love still brings miracles into our lives, meeting us in our moments of need and reminding us that He is near. Whether we're facing a crisis or just feeling overwhelmed by life's demands, God's love is there, ready to bring us the help, the comfort, and the encouragement we need. His miracles may come in different forms: a healing, a provision, an answered prayer. But each one is a testament to His love. Sometimes we wonder if God still performs miracles, if he still cares enough to intervene in our lives. But the truth is, God's love has never stopped, and his miraculous power is as active today as it was in the days of the Bible. His love is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And because of that love, he is always working, always reaching out, always willing to bring miracles into our lives. As we open our hearts to God's love, we also open our eyes to the miracles he is performing around us every day. We begin to see his hand in places we might have overlooked before. That relationship that was restored, that financial provision that came just in time, that peace that filled our hearts in the midst of anxiety. All of these are miracles, signs of God's love reaching into our lives. We don't need to wait for something extraordinary to know that God is with us. We simply need to look around and recognize that every good thing, every answered prayer, every moment of grace is evidence of his miraculous love. And as we learn to recognize these everyday miracles, our faith grows. We start to live with an expectation that God's love will continue to provide, to protect, and to bless us in ways beyond what we can see. So today, let's open our hearts to the miracles of God's love. Let's thank him for the ways he has shown his love, both in the big things and the small. Let's remember that every miracle, whether it's a mighty act of healing or a gentle reminder of his presence, is a gift from a loving Father who delights in caring for his children. God's love is the source of every miracle, and it's a love that is always ready to reach into our lives, to lift us up and to show us that he is with us. Miracles are not simply things of the past. They are a living expression of God's love today. When we believe in his love, we begin to see his miracles all around us, each one a reminder that we are not alone, that we are deeply loved, and that God is with us every step of the way. Recognizing the miracles around us begins with understanding that God's love is woven into every part of our lives, often in ways we may overlook or take for granted. Miracles are not always thunderous, dramatic events. Sometimes they're gentle whispers of God's care, blessings that quietly remind us of his presence. God's love is constantly at work, moving behind the scenes, orchestrating details, and aligning circumstances for our good. But our human tendency is often to focus on what we lack or the difficulties we face, missing the ways God is intervening, guiding, and blessing us each day. Recognizing miracles calls us to open our eyes to the countless ways God expresses his love in the small moments and ordinary days of our lives. From the breath in our lungs to the sunrise each morning, from the relationships that sustain us to the comfort we feel in times of sorrow, God's love brings miracles that are in themselves testimonies of his grace and faithfulness. Take, for example, the story of the Israelites wandering through the wilderness. They had witnessed God's mighty hand in Egypt. They had seen the Red Sea part before them, and yet in the desert they began to grumble, to doubt, and to wonder if God was truly with them. But God, in his steadfast love, continued to provide for them. He gave them manna each morning, enough for each day, a reminder of his daily provision. He led them with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, guiding them, protecting them, never leaving them alone. These miracles, though not as dramatic as the parting of the sea, were expressions of God's unrelenting love. They were daily reminders that God was present, that he cared, and that he was committed to bringing his people to the promised land The Israelites didn't always recognize these daily miracles for what they were, but each act of provision, each day of guidance was a gift of love, a sign that God was with them, providing exactly what they needed. In our own lives, we may find ourselves in a similar position, walking through seasons that feel dry or challenging, wondering if God sees our struggles. We may feel that if God truly loved us, He would perform a miracle to change our circumstances or deliver us from our trials. But often, God's love works differently. Instead of removing every obstacle, He provides us with what we need to endure, to grow, and to see His hand at work in ways that deepen our faith. The miracle may not be in an immediate solution, but in the strength He gives us to persevere, the peace He pours into our hearts, or the wisdom He grants us in difficult decisions. God's love is always there, a constant, unfailing presence that sustains us. Each answered prayer, each moment of comfort, each day's provision is a miracle of love. It's a reminder that God is near, that He is attentive to our needs, and that His love will never fail us. Consider the words of Jesus in Matthew 6:26, where He says, "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they?" Jesus was reminding His listeners that God's love is displayed in the smallest details of creation, that His care is constant and specific. If God provides for the birds of the air, how much more will He provide for us, His beloved children? This is the miracle of God's love, that He sees each of us individually, that He knows our needs even before we ask, and that He delights in providing for us in ways that strengthen our faith and draw us closer to Him. Our lives are filled with these quiet miracles, expressions of a love that watches over us, cares for us, and ensures that we have what we need for each day. When we learn to see these small miracles, we begin to understand the depth of God's love, a love that is personal, faithful, and constant. The challenge for us is to recognize these miracles, to open our eyes and our hearts to the many ways God is at work in our lives. When we pray, it's natural to ask God for help, for provision, for healing. And sometimes we receive those answers immediately. But other times, God's answer comes through daily strength, through people He places in our lives, through a deepened sense of His presence. The miracle may not be the resolution we expected, but it is an invitation to trust Him, to rely on His love, and to know that He is always at work for our good. When we live with an awareness of God's love in every detail, we start to see life itself as a miracle. We recognize His blessings in our relationships, His guidance in our decisions, and His peace in our hearts. We begin to see that every good thing, every moment of joy, every answered prayer is a testament to God's love, a reminder that we are deeply cherished by the Creator of the universe. Living in this awareness transforms our perspective. We begin to thank God for the little things, to find joy in His provision, and to trust that His love will continue to guide and sustain us. We no longer wait only for the dramatic miracles. We learn to celebrate the everyday wonders, the quiet assurances of His care. This doesn't mean we won't face challenges, but it means we know that God is with us in every moment, that His love surrounds us, and that His hand is at work in ways we may not always understand, but can always trust. Our lives become testimonies of God's faithfulness, of His daily miracles that flow from His heart of love. We can face each day with confidence knowing that whatever we face, God's love is there, a steadfast, miracle, working love that never fails. Today, let us make the choice to see our lives through the lens of God's love. Let us thank Him for the blessings we see, and for the blessings we see, and for the miracles we may not yet understand. Let us remember that every good thing we experience is an outpouring of His love, a reminder that He is near, and that His miracles are expressions of a love that knows no bounds. One of the greatest tests of our faith comes when we find ourselves waiting on God for a miracle. Waiting can feel like the most challenging season in our walk with God because it requires us to surrender control, to let go of our timeline, and to trust that God is working behind the scenes in ways we cannot yet see. Waiting can be uncomfortable, even painful, as we long for answers, for healing, for a breakthrough that seems delayed. But the waiting season is not wasted time. It is in these very moments that God's love is most powerfully at work, drawing us closer to Him, teaching us to rely on His strength and building in us a faith that will not be shaken. Waiting on God for a miracle is not passive. It is an active choice to keep trusting, to keep believing, and to hold on to the promises of a faithful God whose love for us is unending. God's timing is not our timing, and His ways are not our ways. Yet His love is constant, and His plan is always for our good, even when we cannot understand the reasons behind the wait. Consider the story of Lazarus in John 11, a story where God's love and timing are displayed in ways that defy human logic. Lazarus, a dear friend of Jesus, fell ill, and his sisters Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus, trusting that He would come quickly to heal him. They knew of Jesus' power, they had seen His miracles, and they believed in His love for their brother. But instead of coming immediately, Jesus stayed where He was for 2 more days. Imagine the disappointment and confusion Mary and Martha must have felt as they watched their brother grow weaker, wondering why Jesus hadn't come. They believed He loved them, they knew He could heal, yet here they were waiting while Lazarus' condition worsened. Finally, Lazarus died, and it seemed as if the chance for a miracle had passed. But Jesus had a purpose in the delay, a purpose rooted in love. When Jesus finally arrived, He didn't just heal Lazarus. He raised him from the dead, performing a miracle that was greater than anyone could have imagined. Through the waiting, Jesus revealed God's glory in a profound way, showing that His love goes beyond what we can understand, reaching into our deepest sorrows to bring new life and renewed hope. The story of Lazarus teaches us that God's love is not limited by time, and His power is not constrained by circumstances. What we perceive as delay is often God's preparation for something greater. He knows the end from the beginning, and His love is intricately involved in every detail of our journey. Waiting on a miracle requires us to trust that God's timing is perfect, that He knows exactly what we need and when we need it. His delays are not denials. They are opportunities for Him to work in ways that will strengthen our faith and bring Him glory. When we find ourselves waiting, we are invited to deepen our relationship with God, to draw closer to Him, and to lean into His love. In the waiting, we learn to surrender our fears, to let go of our doubts, and to trust that God's plan is always better than our own. God's love in the waiting builds a faith that is resilient, a hope that is steadfast, and a peace that surpasses all understanding. In our waiting seasons, God is doing a deep work within us, refining our character, shaping our hearts, and preparing us for the blessings that are to come. Sometimes the miracle we are waiting for is not just about the outcome. It's about the transformation that happens within us as we learn to depend fully on God. Waiting teaches us patience, a patience that knows God's timing is better than our own. It builds in us a trust that believes God is good, even when we can't see the full picture. It creates a resilience that can face any circumstance, knowing that our hope is not in the timing of the miracle, but in the one who holds all time in his hands. And as we wait, God's love sustains us, reminding us that he is near, that he hears our prayers, and that he is working all things together for our good. Each moment of waiting is an opportunity to experience God's presence, to feel his comfort, and to know that we are held. Waiting for a miracle can sometimes feel like we are standing in the dark, uncertain of what lies ahead. But God's love is the light that guides us through the darkness. His promises are the anchor that holds us steady, and his presence is the peace that fills our hearts. In the quiet moments of waiting, God whispers to us, reassuring us that he is in control, that he has not forgotten us, and that his love is working in ways we cannot yet see. Isaiah 40:30, reminds us, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." This is the promise of God's love, that as we wait, he renews us, strengthens us, and equips us to rise. Above our circumstances, waiting becomes a place of growth, a place of preparation, and a place where our faith becomes unshakable. If you are waiting on God for a miracle today, remember that his love is at work in the waiting. He is not silent and he is not distant. He is right there with you, guiding you, holding you, and preparing you for what is to come. Let his love fill you with hope, with peace, and with a confidence that his timing is perfect. The God who loves you has not forgotten you. He sees every tear, hears every prayer, and holds every moment in his hands. His love is your assurance that the waiting is not in vain, that he is preparing something beautiful, and that the miracle, when it comes, will be beyond what you could ask or imagine. Keep trusting, keep believing, and hold on to the truth that God's love is working a miracle, even now in ways you cannot yet see. The waiting may be hard, but the God who loves you is faithful, and he will fulfill his promises in his perfect time. When we experience God's miracles, whether they come in dramatic answers to prayer or in the quiet unfolding of his provision, our response should always be one of gratitude and testimony. Miracles are not only moments of divine intervention, they are invitations to remember, to celebrate, and to proclaim the goodness of God. When God does something miraculous in our lives, it's not just for our benefit. It's an opportunity to declare his power, his love, and his faithfulness to others. A heart of gratitude recognizes that every blessing, every provision, every healing, and every breakthrough is an undeserved gift from a gracious and loving Father. And when we give thanks, we keep our focus on him rather than on ourselves. Gratitude is the soil in which faith grows, reminding us that God is not only able to meet our needs, but is eager to do so because of his love for us. Each miracle, each answered prayer, strengthens our faith and becomes a building block in the foundation of our trust in him. Think about the story of the 10 lepers in Luke 17. As they cried out to Jesus for healing, Jesus responded with compassion, instructing them to go and show themselves to the priests. And as they went, they were miraculously healed. But out of the 10, only one returned to give thanks. Only one came back to express his gratitude, to recognize the miracle as a personal encounter with the love of God. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? This response shows us that Jesus cares deeply about our gratitude, that he desires our hearts to respond in thankfulness for what he has done. The one who returned to give thanks was not only healed physically, but received something greater, an affirmation of faith that brought him closer to the heart of Jesus. This story is a reminder that miracles are not simply acts of power. They are acts of love that deserve our heartfelt thanks. And when we pause to thank God, we honor him. We deepen our relationship with him, and we open our hearts to see his hand in even more areas of our lives. Expressing gratitude doesn't end with a personal thank you to God. It extends outward, becoming a testimony to those around us. Every time we share what God has done, we are planting seeds of faith in others, inspiring them to believe that God's love is just as real and just as powerful for them. Our testimonies are reminders that God is active, that he is listening, and that his love reaches into every area of our lives. Psalm 105:1 says, "Give praise to the Lord, proclaim his name, make known among the nations what he has done." When we tell others about the miracles in our lives, we are proclaiming the goodness of God, declaring the goodness of God, declaring that he is worthy of our trust and our praise. Our testimonies can encourage someone who is struggling, uplift someone who is waiting on their own miracle, and draw others to the God who has shown us such love and grace. In sharing our stories, we become vessels through which God's love flows to others, drawing them closer to him and building their faith. In moments of miracle, big or small, our gratitude and testimony become a ripple effect that reaches beyond ourselves. We may never know how deeply our words impact others, but God uses every testimony to touch hearts and transform lives. Perhaps you have been blessed with provision when you needed it most, or you've experienced healing that came when hope seemed lost, or you felt the peace of God in a situation that could have easily filled you with fear. These moments are not just for us to keep to ourselves. They are gifts meant to be shared, to be spoken of, so that others can see the goodness of God in our lives. When we share what God has done, we become part of his work in others' lives. We become encouragers, witnesses to his faithfulness, and examples of his unfailing love. Gratitude also guards our hearts against forgetting the source of our blessings. In Deuteronomy 8, God warns the Israelites not to forget him when they enter the promised land, not to take credit for the abundance they would enjoy, but to remember that it was his hand that had delivered them and provided for them every step of the way. In our human nature, we sometimes tend to forget the miracle after we've received it. We go back to our routines, and the memory of God's intervention fades. But gratitude keeps the miracle alive in our hearts, reminding us of his faithfulness and his love. It keeps us grounded, constantly aware that we are living by the grace of a loving God. When we continually thank him, we stay connected to the one who sustains us, and our hearts remain tender and responsive to his presence. So today, let us be people who live with grateful hearts, who acknowledge God's hand in every blessing and every miracle. Let us be people who share his goodness with others, who aren't afraid to speak of what God has done, who are bold in proclaiming that His love is real and His power is active. Let us be like the one leper who returned, who recognized that the miracle was more than a physical healing. It was an encounter with the love of Jesus. And as we cultivate a heart of gratitude, as we share our testimonies, we open ourselves up to see God's work in new ways. We create an atmosphere of faith, a readiness to believe in His goodness, and a spirit of expectancy that keeps our eyes open for more of His love poured out in miraculous ways. As we continue to witness God's love bringing miracles into our lives, let's respond with gratitude that fuels our faith, with testimonies that inspire others, and with hearts that remain anchored in the God who never fails. Each miracle we experience is a reminder of His love, a love that deserves our deepest thanks, our highest praise, and our willingness to share it with the world. As we come to the close of this message on God's love brings miracles, let us take a moment to truly consider the depth and beauty of this truth. God's love is not a distant, passive force. It is alive, active, and deeply invested in every detail of our lives. His love moves mountains, heals hearts, provides in times of need, and brings peace in the midst of chaos. His love is the foundation of every miracle. Whether it is a moment of physical healing, a financial provision, a restored relationship, or a simple moment of peace that washes over us when we need it most. Every miracle is a gift from the heart of a loving Father who knows us, cares for us, and wants us to experience the fullness of His presence. It is a reminder that God is not only powerful, but deeply personal, that He desires a relationship with us that is rich, real, and overflowing with His goodness. Today, I want to invite you to open your heart to this truth. God's love is ready to bring miracles into your life. But to experience His miraculous work, we must approach Him with a heart of faith, trust, and surrender. Sometimes we hold back, letting doubt or fear keep us from fully believing that God can and will work in our lives. But faith is the key that unlocks the door to God's blessings. Faith doesn't mean we understand everything. It means we trust God in everything. It means saying, Lord, I may not see how this is going to work out, but I believe in your love for me. And I trust that you are able to do exceedingly, abundantly, above all that I could ask or imagine. God responds to that kind of faith, the faith that rests in His character and clings to His promises, knowing that His love never fails. As you move forward from today, I encourage you to begin each day with an open heart, expectant for the ways God's love will show up in your life. Make it a practice to pray boldly, to ask God for what you need, to lift up your hopes, your fears, and your dreams before Him. Ask for His miraculous intervention, not only in the grand and dramatic areas of your life, but in the daily details as well. Believe that God is not limited by your circumstances or the size of your need. He is a God who delights in giving good gifts to His children, who knows what you need before you even ask, and who is always ready to reveal His love through acts of grace and mercy that only He can accomplish. Trust that His timing is perfect, that His ways are higher than your ways, and that He is working even now in ways you cannot see. And as you witness God's love bringing miracles into your life, let your response be one of gratitude and testimony. Don't let the wonders of God's love pass by without stopping to say thank you and to tell others what He has done. Gratitude keeps your heart aligned with God, reminding you of His goodness and strengthening your faith for the future. When you share your testimony, you plant seeds of hope and faith in those around you. Your story of God's love at work may be exactly what someone else needs to hear to believe that God's love is real for them too. Become a living testimony. A person whose life radiates the goodness of God, whose words encourage and uplift others, and whose faith points others to the Savior. So here is my challenge to you today. Embrace the reality that God's love is the source of every miracle. Don't limit your view of what He can do by focusing on the difficulties you face. Instead, turn your eyes to Him, the God who loves you beyond measure, the God who is with you in every season, who delights in meeting your needs, and who longs to pour out His blessings upon you. Live with expectation. Pray with faith. Trust with all your heart. God's love is not just something to believe in. It's something to experience, to cherish, and to share. Open your heart wide and make room for the miracles that His love is ready to bring into your life. And finally, let this be a daily reminder. God's love is unchanging. His power is boundless, and His faithfulness is sure. Whatever you face, whatever challenges lie ahead, remember that you are not alone. You are loved by the Creator of the universe, a love that is active, a love that brings healing, a love that moves mountains, a love that brings peace in the storm, a love that brings peace in the storm, a love that promises to be with you every step of the way. Go forward in confidence with a heart open to His love and a life ready to testify of His goodness. Let your life be a reflection of the miraculous love of God, a light that shines in a world that needs to know that miracles are real, that hope is alive, and that God's love is here, reaching out, ready to work wonders in every heart, willing to receive it